Now let's talk about some of the tools we can use. So vulnerability scanners search for OS and service versions, open ports, protocols in use, installed applications. Now, of course, all of this is part of scanning and enumerating, but then they look for defaults, weak passwords, weak permissions, misconfigurations, and mostly they look for signatures of known vulnerabilities. You can assess from all sorts of angles. You can just sit there and sniff and observe, that's passive. You can actually scan and rattle doorknobs, that's active. You can do it from the outside, you can do it internally, you can do it against external resources, you can do it against hosts, you can do it against network services, you can do it wired, wireless, you can do it against applications. These are all different ways of doing vulnerability assessments. And they all follow this same sort of cycle. Start by gathering the info. If necessary, threat model. So when you get some, when you are looking at what to scan, you look at the most critical resources. Do your analysis of the vulnerability. And then from there, what you'll do is you'll exploit and you'll clean up and make sure that you have your backdoors in place and you do reporting. So vulnerability assessment right here, but some of the tools will do like several of these for you. Metasploit will even go up to this point right here, and some of them, like Metasploit Pro, will do the whole thing like this right here. But most vulnerability scanners actually stop at vulnerability analysis. Then they export their findings to a validator like Metasploit, which finishes up. Now, managing vulnerabilities, like everything, has a life cycle. And here is the classic life cycle. You start with creating a baseline. This means you identify what's critical. You identify existing controls, and you define how far you're going to assess the scope. You then go ahead and you do your scan, your vulnerability scan. You test for weaknesses. But in vulnerability assessment, please don't only test technology. Test people and processes. And then you determine, based on what you find, the probability and the impact of the threat. So it's impact times probability gives the overall risk level. You then make recommendations to mitigate the threat, to remediate, looking for root cause analysis. Once we fix this, we don't want it coming back. So not only fix the symptom, fix the problem. You validate that any mitigation, any remediation, any control that's put in place is actually doing its job. And you just keep on monitoring. You watch logs, you watch intrusion detection, firewall, you watch other things just to see if your controls are still working. And this whole thing is vulnerability management, and it goes round and round and round forever. So that is what we need to know in terms of vulnerability assessment solutions.